Welcome to episode 311 of the Whatnauts review show, where every week we pick a story and we talk about it. This could be a movie, TV series, anime, manga, comic book, audio drama, all kinds of entertainment. We watch it, read it, or listen to it, and then we come back here and we talk about it. My name is Melissa Wilkinson, and I am joined, as always, by Kyle Springer. Kyle,
Hi, Bob.
what color is your energy today?
It's amber.
We finally made it.
Anyways, no one will think that joke is as funny as we do.
Other millennials will.
Right, yeah. Exactly. Melissa, how are you? How's your weekend been?
It's good. I got a new car. I swear I'm
wow.
not just copying off the fact that you just got a
Wow.
new car.
Cramping my style, Melissa. Jeez. 'Cause, yeah. You when last we spoke about it, you had gone to a thing to like check out some new cars, but you were like, "But that's just like the start of my research. I'm looking to get one like end of the year or something like that." So you bought one already. Wow! Congratulations.
Mine had one more day where it wouldn't start on me, and I refused to put any more money into that thing. I'm like, this has become unreliable.
Yeah.
It's 10 years old. I don't even like it anymore. I resented paying for things for it.
Oh
It's
man,
like, the
yeah.
time is now. I can get the car that I want without compromising, because I haven't had a new car in 10 years, and having any feature is dazzling to me. I live in the future now with my screen and Bluetooth that I don't have to use a USB dongle that takes over an unused radio station for.
Oh yeah. Absolutely. So what did you end up with?
The brand new 2025 Chevy Trax, Car and Driver's top-rated subcompact SUV.
There you go. Awesome stuff. So that must have been an exciting thing to go and get and do and all of that good stuff. So
It has heated seats and remote start, which is perfect
Nice.
for when it's like 15 degrees outside.
absolutely. Yeah, it's been real cold where I am. We got a little bit of snow yesterday, not much. We're supposed to get some more snow on Tuesday.
Yep.
We also had snow like last Tuesday, and on the Wednesday that my partner and I took off, because we also had a wedding to go to that day, we were like, let's go get our taxes done that morning so we can just get that out of the way since we're both off of work. And of course, because it had snowed the night before, like no one wanted to go into work, and so my like we called the tax place, be like, are you guys even open? And they were like, no, we only answered because we recognized your name. Like, no, we're not. I'm not even supposed to be here. I'm just picking up something, and then I have to leave. So we were like, oh well. But that's kind of what I've been up to, in that, like, it's really cold, so I can't do much.
Yeah.
But, yeah, so who knows?
Wednesday wedding, huh?
Yeah, for a coworker of Rachel's. It was an interesting one. But we had a good time. I felt so bad for them taking pictures out in the cold, in their dresses and all of that stuff. Just like, oh my God, it had to have been like 14 outside.
They knew what they were planning. An outdoor photo shoot for a wedding in February. They could have made a lot of different choices.
Especially here in Oklahoma, you never really know. Sometimes it is like, yeah, you'll have an inch or two of snow, or it'll be below freezing. Sometimes it'll be like, it's 65 in February. It feels great. So you never know. But yeah, we had a wedding to go to. They had a TV, and the bride was at the reception was like, who here likes Tetris? I want the 3 best Tetris players to 3v1 me right now. Let's go.
Oh my gosh, what a power move.
Yeah.
Does the winner get the bouquet? Is that, you don't just have to catch something that I throw, you must
You
beat
have
me
to
in a
beat me
game
in
to get the
Tetris,
bouquet?
Yeah, the student becomes the master. No, they had that and Smash Bros and stuff like that. The DJ, I think, was real proud of himself when he realized that most everyone was kind of around my age. And so playing pop punk was the way to go. Of like, yes, they all love that. More of that. Let's do that.
Sugar, we are going down swinging.
That's what he played. Yep. Indeed. Melissa, what are we here to talk about this episode?
We are talking about seasons 3 and 4 of the Apple TV Plus speculative fiction show For All Mankind. This catches us up to where the show currently is. Season 4 aired last January. I believe we read that season 5 has been greenlit, should be in the works.
Yeah. And you also mentioned something to me about a spin-off or
yes.
something at one point.
What I read on Wikipedia 2 weeks ago is that season 5 is greenlit. The show is planned through 7 seasons. And there is supposed to be a spinoff called Star City that's all about the Russian side of the decades of show we've seen to this point.
Interesting. Okay. Well, yeah, we have now caught up with the show. We just watched seasons 3 and 4. Melissa, what did you think now that we were all caught up here? You gave me a small tidbit off mic like a week ago of what you thought of season 3, or at least like the first half. What are you thinking?
I don't even remember what I said anymore. This show can be so dramatic, so heart-wrenching, so tense. But it's also gotten to the point where it has earned the right to be a little ridiculous. And it's a lot of fun. Like, nothing has broken the tone of the show. It's as high stakes as it ever was. I'm as impressed as I've ever been. But I love that also they can pull some ridiculous stunts, like the things we're going to have to talk about in our spoiler break. You know what they are.
Yeah. So yeah, when you told me off mic, you're like, I've only seen through episode 6. You described the start of season 3 as a messy bitch that loves drama.
Yeah. Yeah, the beginning of season 3 in particular, that is the tone they're working with there in episode 1.
Yeah, and not just that first episode, not the like season premiere. It continues all throughout season 3 here. I think I'm at a different place with this show. I really enjoyed seasons 1 and 2. Not so much with season 3 and 4. I still liked a lot of what we got, but much more complicated feelings, I think, of like, I'm wrestling with it a little bit more, I think. But still some phenomenal stuff regardless. So
yeah, they've become a lot more sci-fi at this point. The character casts are shaken up a bit. There's a lot of new characters. There's both characters dying off and also characters who just refuse to die. You're like, at the end of season 4, you're shocked that they are still alive.
Yeah, I think season 3 kind of swung for the fences with all of the tension that they were trying to build in that season. It felt like every 2 episodes or so we had something that felt like it could have been the season finale of that, like of previous seasons, right? There's a big landslide that happens in there, and that whole thing felt like it could have been a season finale, but it's like episode 3, like episode 2 or something like that, and it's just like, what? And they keep putting one thing after another, and yeah, it gets a little ridiculous to the point where what actually does happen in the finale, I kind of rolled my eyes at. I was like, this is just kind of bizarre.
We'll talk about it. We'll talk about how even when it's ridiculous, it's not doing something you've already seen. the highs are the highs of the show is when it shows you something completely new. The lows of the show is when it shows you something you could see in any other show that isn't about the future of space travel.
I think I would agree with that because I think season 4 kind of then overcorrected from what happened in season 3. And I'll be honest, I felt most of season 4 was largely boring until the final 4 episodes. It took until the end of season 7. Or not season 7, episode 7 for me to be like, okay, now I'm interested in what's happening here. And I mean, there's still great performances. There's like large payoff for things that have been going since season 1 and 2. Like there is good stuff that is happening. But like you said, that the kind of lowest that the show has been is these things that like, I don't think this needs to be a show about space travel if you're showing me all of this stuff. Like, you could just show me a show about politics, a drama about something. Like, it does not need to be about space travel. And I feel like through most of season 4, it kind of lost that. Like, no, this is supposed to be a show about, like, space travel and exploration. And by the time we get to season 4, what's next? And it felt like it barely got there in season 4. So I don't know. That was just my thoughts. I still had a good time.
It takes a
watching
little while to lock in, but I think it does ask interesting questions of, okay, if we've reached this point, what are the consequences? What would be happening at this stage in this new societal evolution?
Yeah. Yeah, they are certainly trying to ask those questions. I also just felt like certain characters' storylines, like I was like, oh, I think I know where this is gonna go, and I'm excited. It would then take a turn, and I'd be like, oh, okay, so it's not going to be that story, all right? And then it'd take another episode or so to be like, okay, so they didn't go that route, but I think they're going to do this one thing, and then no, not that either, huh? And I think in most shows, something like keeping the viewer on their toes is a good thing. But with this, I felt like they were almost dodging some of the questions or stuff like that, but also asking like I don't disagree with you either. Like they're also still asking questions that I feel like should be asked. Maybe they just don't need to spend as much time on them or stuff like. Maybe a more positive way to look at season 4 for me was they spent about 7 episodes on setup to like set things up to where they wanted to get them, so that the last half of that show, the last like third of that show was fantastic. And with a show that has these big time jumps in it, maybe you didn't need to do all that setup. I'm kind of used to you already being like, okay, here's the new status quo, right? So that's kind of what I'm wrestling with right now and how I felt about season 3 and 4. But yeah, let's do a synopsis of kind of what is happening in season 3 and 4 here.
In season 3, we see the private sector enter the space race. And now our 3 factions are NASA, Roscosmos, the Russian Space Force, and Helios, this privately owned tech company. And the 3 of them are in a race to Mars. And it's a lot of that season is spent on who's going to get there first. And then when they do get there, a lot of things go wrong in the process of getting there. And then once they are there, and then in the process of sending anybody home. And then season 4 is a lot about Mars. And now that we've been here for about a decade, how much longer are we going to be here? What is the future of Mars? What is the project that's really going to pin people to Mars? And then it's more of a what business do we want to conduct on Earth and what business do we conduct on Mars? And that's the major conflict of that season.
Yeah. Like we said, some wild things happen in season 3. I think the end of season 4 is spectacular. There's some great
Yes.
performances all around. It's always interesting to see kind of where different characters go, especially in a show that spans multiple decades. There's plenty of stuff to dig into with this show, which I think is a good thing in general here. Do you have any other kind of things you want to add to your general thoughts of this before we go into housekeeping and then spoilers?
This show does some excellent Lost homages and references.
Sure.
And I look forward to talking with you about those. And to see,
Cool.
there's a small one that
Absolutely.
I'm curious if you caught or not.
I don't know if I did. I don't know if I thought of Lost as I was watching this. Really. We're also about to cover the first half of Severance season 2,
Yes.
and there's certainly some Lost type
Right.
stuff in that.
We're living in a high time for it. Severance, and just one episode into this new season of Yellow Jackets, there's a very Lost moment in that episode.
I haven't even started Yellow Jackets yet, so
Okay, all right. There's a lot of meat on the bone right now.
indeed. Well, let's take a quick break for housekeeping, and when we come back, we will dive deeper into season 3 and 4 of For All Mankind. So we will be right back. Thank you so much for checking out this podcast. We hope you're enjoying it. If you didn't know, we make multiple different shows here at the Whatnauts, and a lot of hard work goes into making them, so we would love it if you check them all out. But none of this is possible without your support. Head over to patreon.com/thewhatnauts and you can get access to over 40 hours of exclusive content, including our Patreon first podcast, The Pilots Club, when you sign up at our $3 tier. Of course, there is a free version of the Pilots Club available, but episodes are exclusive to our Patreon for 2 years before they hit the free feeds. If you're interested in buying merch, we have shirts, hoodies, mugs, and more for sale over at thewhatnauts.com/store. Another great way to help us out is by subscribing and leaving a nice rating and review on your podcasting app of choice. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel for video versions of the show, trailer reactions, and live streams. And lastly, you can always find out more information about the shows we make on our website, thewhatnauts.com. All right, we are back. Thank you so much to all of our Patreon supporters. We love you a lot.
Thank you.
A ton. Let's see. Over on the Pilots Club, this whole year, the year of the detective, for the month of February, we got to talk about an anime called Detective Conan, aka Case Closed. And coming up for March, Matlock, right? That's the new one. The new
Yep, the new
version
Lady
of
Matlock starring Kathy Bates.
I'm excited to dig into that one. I've heard some good things about that, but I am at a loss for what the new kind of concept is that had people buzzing so much about that. But coming up on the free version of the Pilots Club, I guess you could say this was also an honorary member of Detective Month, but we went back and we did the pilot of CSI, the original CSI. That'll be the one on the free feeds in March, so be on the lookout for that. Some good early what was it? Early 2000s nostalgia, which is kind of what we have here in For All Mankind, even though it is more speculative because history went a different way and they have all sorts of tech that we don't have and who knows what. But yeah, that's what's happening over on the Pilots Club. Right here on the review show, of course, we've been covering For All Mankind, so our last one was on the first 2 seasons. Go check that out if you have not yet. And then over on the Captain's Log, Melissa and I went to our commercial hall of fame. Got to reminisce about commercials that have stuck with us over our lifespan. Things that were just wild, Josie, annoying songs that got stuck in our head, people that we remember. Like, I remember that guy, right?
Yes.
So we had a good time with all of that. But keep your eyes peeled for some stuff happening over on the reactor core as well. Right after we record this, we are recording our first check-in on Severance Season 2. We'll be covering the first 5 episodes on that. And then shortly after that, we will be doing a quick Captain America Brave New World spoiler cast. You already mentioned Yellow Jackets. We might do a spoiler cast once that whole thing is out, or something like that. So be on the lookout for some fun things over on the Reactor Core as well. But that's about it for housekeeping. So, without further ado, let's get on to For All Mankind. Okay, I'll bite. What is this Lost reference thing that you're talking about here? Let's start with that.
Well, at the end of season 3, after there's been this race to Mars, there's the reveal that there has been a lone North Korean astronaut marooned there.
Yeah, sure.
That's a very obvious, that's a Desmond.
Sure, yeah.
But this is something that I was wondering if it was going to come back, and it never did. So I wonder if this is laying some groundwork for somebody who's going to return in season 5. Do you remember in season 4, early season 4, Dev Ayesa is meditating out on the beach, and the surfer girl comes up to him?
Right, yeah.
Did you recognize her?
I don't think so.
That's Alex. That is Alex Russo Linus from Lost.
Is that really?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Huh. Okay. Yeah. Did not recognize her at all. Did not even come to mind. Wow. Okay.
It's a weird little interaction. And I'm like,
it really is.
I'm so puzzled why that was there. And she seems like, I don't know, for a show that does seem to have some fondness for Lost, and we have Lost colored glasses on all the time, you and I. But
Yeah.
like, that feels like a deliberate person to put in this role. Is she coming back and she never comes back? But I don't know.
I don't know. Like, looking at that scene, I'm wondering if it's more of like a wake up call for him, or just not even like a full wake up call, but a way to look at a part of his character, because he represents Helios and is this private sector of like, we don't listen to any governments and do all of that stuff. Here comes this surfer who's also not following the rules he set for his own property, and she's just like, who cares? I'm here to surf, man. Just like, calm down, right? And I'm wondering if that is more just something to kind of nudge him awake a little bit, to be like, maybe I have been a little bit wanton in the way I'm doing things. Not necessarily that I need to work closer with the government, but in a sense, like, maybe I need to be a bit more of a team player here, and see. But I don't know. That's an interesting catch, because I did not recognize her at all. Interesting. All right.
Let's go back to the beginning. I love that the season 3 premiere gets to be a Poseidon adventure. I think it's in a show that's so serialized, that doesn't really have one-off episodes. That's the closest we've gotten, and it was kind of fun.
Yeah. So there's so much that happens in season 3. So the Poseidon, what exactly happens in the Poseidon?
Oh, that's when there's
the
the space hotel that Karen and Sam Cleveland are running, and Danny and Amber? Is her name Amber? Is that the color of her energy? They're up there. So. They're getting.
Season 3 starts with Amber.
Right. This was meant to be.
Yeah, that's an interesting one because I did not expect them to have like a space hotel. Like that was just like,
Right.
oh, all right,
Yeah.
sure.
So we
Commercial, yeah.
now we've jumped. Season 2 ended in 83, I think. And this season picks up
1992 is what Wikipedia
92.
says.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it does seem like quite an advancement to have made in that amount of time. And maybe it was an advancement ahead of its time because it dies on its maiden voyage. It's a real
Pretty
Titanic
much.
story.
Pretty much. Yeah, I think I liked that episode as a season opener, right? Because we've talked about it a little bit already, but we're used to these time jumps where it sets the new status quo. And I think with something like this, I was thinking, okay, how is this space hotel gonna play in for the rest of the season? And it's kind of a bait and switch. Like it's not it's not so much a hotel that like whoever and their uncle gets to come up, right? But because something goes so catastrophically wrong with that, they kind of decommission it as a hotel. And eventually it gets reused as something else, but it's still it's this like, oh, you think like we're here to like commercialize this? Well, not exactly, right?
Right.
And so I liked that. I enjoyed this season opener because it is also like as they start to get that private sector, that third party out there, as they start to think about, well, maybe in a little bit we can go to Mars, right? We can do stuff like that. I think one of the questions that is starting to come up in people's minds, and certainly was in mind, was colonization. Like, are we going to have some kind of colony that or colony-like thing, like a hotel, right? Where you can go up and visit. So all of these people, they don't have spacesuits on, right? They have the artificial gravity on, and things just go wrong. Stuff gets depressurized. The gravity gets more and more. I liked the thing of the standee on the cake, the like sinking in the cake. Like that was neat. Yeah, like there's some great stuff, and people don't really know this like gradual increase of danger as it's happening. But we know, we see it. And we're just like, what is happening? How will they find out? So yeah, I thought it started off pretty strong.
This show, up until this point, hadn't had a specific human villain. There's the overall antagonism with the Russians. There's characters like James Urbaniak coming in from the House Un-American Activities Committee to like grill a couple characters in season 1.
Yeah.
But the first villain we get is Danny in season 3. Like, this is a fascinating choice. When he sleeps with Karen in season 2, I'm like, what is this for? What are we going to get out of this? Why did it have to be him to service this storyline in the Baldwin family? And when you see him come back in season 3, he's exactly the way you left him. He is obsessed with Karen. Every other thing he does in his life is a sham to keep up appearances because he knows he can never get back with her, but that's all he wants.
It's an interesting one, and this is one of the things that I was like, I don't know, I don't really like this whole storyline here. I don't know if they did feel the need to have more of a villainous character in antagonist, but I think if I'm to zoom out and look at it a little bit objectively, season 3, especially for his character, and then I don't remember his younger brother's name. Jimmy. It deals a lot with them and both of them dealing with their parents' legacy in a different way, which is something I kind of like and want from the show. I just don't think I like what they did with all of this. You have one character who, in general, most people think of their parents as heroes for all the space stuff that they did, for their sacrifice that they made to switch the things in the season finale of season two. They saved a lot of people. And both of these brothers deal with the public kind of lauding them as heroes differently. Danny takes it in a much more like, I need to idolize them, I need to be the hero, I need to step up. And he kind of thinks he's there already, especially because he's gotten some treatment in the past that kind of suggests that, like, oh, because of who you are, we'll give you a little bit of special treatment because of who your parents were. And so yeah, he ends up being the hero on the Polaris. He goes out and saves everyone on this. But at the same time, he also has this weird obsession with Karen that is mixing in with that, and it just makes him this asshole. He's just he's just an antagonist. Like that's the only thing he is there to be. And I don't know if I find that interesting.
When you look back at his story, you do think about how, even though Ed and Karen have had, they're divorced in season 3, they've had plenty of rough spots. They were maybe not as visibly outwardly a problem the same way Gordo and Tracy were. So you think about little Danny, his parents fight. One or both of them are gone all the time. He spends all this time at the Baldwin house, where Karen is this really strong mother figure, and she's with Ed up in space. She's really trying to keep the boys in line. Like, they have to call her ma'am. She gives them these little orders. Shane dies. He's completely silent in his grief. If you remember, the first person he talks to, he won't talk to his mom, but he'll talk to Karen. When he goes back to the house to bring back Shane's soapbox racer or whatever it was. You can't understand where he developed a fascination with her.
Yeah.
You think about the way she is in season 1, tight-lipped, keeping up appearances. I have this terrible secret that I must not tell Ed. Her son is dying. And he's kind of like that. Like, I have to keep up appearances. I have to do what it is that people expect of me.
Right.
And you learn that in between seasons 2 and 3, he developed a substance abuse problem, got in this terrible accident, tried to pull himself out. Now he went to AA and he went to church and he married this really sweet girl. And you feel so bad for her. Like, she deserved none of this. She's innocent in all of this.
Yeah.
And I do think it's an interesting twist that the worst thing he does is not something he deliberately does. It's when he's high out of his mind, stuck at that command center, and just stares as the equipment malfunctions and that landslide happens, and it's too much noise, and he just flips the comm switch off. Like, the fact that it's almost something he doesn't do as opposed to what he does do.
I don't know, though.
That's an interesting turn.
I feel like it is maybe a mix of both. I don't think you're necessarily wrong by saying he doesn't do it on purpose, but I think he also takes the drugs on purpose.
He does.
He's so
he has
mad.
A real
he's
problem.
So upset, right? Yeah, like he's finally reached his breaking point to the point where he makes a decision that then hurts other people, and I think he does that on purpose, but he does not necessarily flip the switch on purpose to shut the comm. Like, he's not like, and I will kill everyone by turning up right.
It's just this immediate primal need of too much noise.
Yeah.
Off.
And he's trying to live up to the expectations and the pedestal that people have put his parents on, and I think it's a lot of pressure on him. But he almost has this Oedipus complex, but with
definitely.
Karen in that role.
Yeah, and I've never seen an Oedipus complex applied to not your parents, but your friends' parents, your surrogate parents.
It's his surrogate mom, right? And it's just, I don't know. It feels distracting from the other stuff that's happening on the base. I get that there should be some personal stuff happening between these characters, and that helps to ramp up the tension. But yeah, his side of things just kind of felt distracting to me.
It does. It is extreme maneuvers, and it does kind of feel like something from another show. There are some things that do feel earned. Like I said, when you look at what his character's experiences in a straight line, they track. Like, his characterization makes sense.
Yep.
But in a show that is typically spending its time and energy on other dynamics, I understand what you mean when you say it's distracting.
Yeah.
I do think it's very funny when he destroys that robot dog.
Like, once I saw that, I immediately knew, like, oh man, that dog, if they're going to kill a dog in a show, have it be one of those annoying little robot dogs that all it can do is yap and maybe do a backflip, right?
Yeah.
God.
And-
yeah. I did you have something else to say on
Yes.
him and his storyline? Go
And then
ahead, then, please.
He never even confesses to Ed. Nobody knows he's the person Karen slept with, except for he told his brother Jimmy and Karen told Wayne. And those are the only people who know. Ed never learns this information, which is, it's always fascinating when a show has a secret like that and keeps that secret. And then you have that tension of, is the other shoe going to drop here, or are you withholding this on purpose?
It did almost get to a point where I felt like it was understood, that Ed kind of figured it out and understood and was retaliating in his own way, but they never actually talked about it per se. He at one point does say it was me, but then switches what he was saying it was me about.
Yes.
Yeah, so there is some great stuff in all of that. Like, the show certainly excels at, like, inter-character, personal relationships and stuff like that.
And in season 4, there's this mystery of what happened to him. And it's revealed that, well, you do see at the end of season 3 that he is banished for what he did in allowing this accident to happen. They're like, we have rescued this marooned North Korean soldier. Again, an incredible reveal. The cold open, just spending 10 minutes with that guy. Yes. He's got a gun. He's got one of those last, this is your last option. If you are captured, you take your own life. You do not give up any secrets.
Yeah.
And when Danielle stumbles across him, thinking this is just an unmanned ship. Has no idea it was manned, and there's a man still there. And he's brandishing the gun at her. After that altercation, she buries the gun. And I'm like, when does the gun come back out of the sand? Right, we've got the sand gun. And when they imprison Danny in the North Korean ship, because it's habitable, they're like, Danny, you are banished. You will live here. Once a month, we will bring you supplies. You're wondering, either is he going to find the gun and take his own life, or because their supplies are so thin, are they going to reach a point where they're like, we can no longer bring Danny food? The only way we can live is if we just never go back to Danny and we let Danny starve. And we just look the other way about it. Which would have been really tough
or does he
interesting.
Find the gun and go back to them to threaten them with the gun, right?
Right, and then they have to take him out in some other way. They don't have an opposing gun, I don't think, but we had to murder Danny because Danny came after us with a North Korean gun, and instead they go back there, and he never found the gun at all. He just went out, laid against a rock, and just let himself wither away, seemingly, which is
died of
so
grief or
right,
something.
So sad, so pitiful. Like, really not the direction you were expecting. Of an interesting end to that character.
Yeah. On the flip side, his brother
Yeah.
sees his parents, like everyone being like, oh man, they were great, they're heroes, like true Americans, right? They're awesome. And he's just like, no, they weren't. They yelled at each other all the time. They argued. They got
Yeah.
divorced. My father had a drinking problem. No, they were terrible people. And so he eventually falls susceptible to people who are a little bit more radicalized. Again, like the government is lying, the media is lying, and he gets radicalized along with them. He still struggles with it a little bit. I think there
Yes.
are moments where he's like, but these people seem genuine. Like, it seems like maybe
Yes.
there was a side that I missed to my parents here.
Right. And there's these radicals believe that the story of the Stevenses making this, tremendous voyage outside, just wrapped up in duct tape and oxygen masks, and they saved everybody. They're like, no way. That story's too perfect. It's not possible. It's a cover up. They're covering something up. And I don't know if Jimmy believes that specifically, that it's a cover up, but maybe he is tuning into.
They're just
there
not
is
saying everything.
right.
Not
There is a
telling the truth.
larger sense of dishonesty here.
Yeah.
That I don't know if I can put up with.
Right.
At the end of season 3, I don't know if it's unintentionally underwhelming that Karen just dies in this bombing kind of randomly, or if that is the point of it, that it is so random. Like, it does not come at like a height of her storyline. She's kind of already been there. She's just like at Johnson Space Center, like as a representative of Helios, and she's like, oh, Jimmy, hi. Like, it's not, she doesn't get to die among characters that she has a very strong connection to. It's sort of odd, and I don't know if that's on purpose. Like, we have this character who we've spent time with, and because one person just makes the wrong move, makes a mistake, and can't reverse it, this woman who we did know and care about dies, and that's on his hands, and all of these other people die as well. And we see in the news reel at the beginning of season 4 that Jimmy is in jail. Mm-hmm. I do wonder if we're ever going to see him again.
Yeah. I do think Karen dying like that is purposeful, because I feel like it kind of mirrors her son's death, that it just kind of happens randomly. And it really sucks for Ed, who every time he goes up into space, he loses someone he loves, right?
Yes.
Like, he is the quintessential, like, man of space, like, by the end of season 4, like, that is his home. He, like, Mars is where I live now. And it just sucks that, like, every time he goes up there, he loses someone he loves. Which does not bode well for his daughter and stuff like that, right? Or his grandson. But
the two people he has left. Heck, even like other people who he's close to. He's up in space. Karen dies. Molly dies. Him and Molly were old friends. And
yeah. So I think it's purposeful in that way, but also, like again, I don't know if I was really into this whole, like, the media's lying to you, man, kind of.
It felt like it's an interesting addition and an interesting mirror to real life conspiracy theories, like how Stanley Kubrick directed the moon landing.
Yeah.
But I almost feel like if you were to introduce it, it could have needed more time.
Either more time to set it up, or I feel like the bombing could have been the Russians. Like, you could have taken that whole storyline out and made it more about the Russians, get more of their perspective, which is something I've been wanting from the first 2 seasons. And especially with them trying to get, oh God, why am I blanking on her name? Margo. With them trying to get her out, and this whole race to get to that, like, it feels like they could have kind of mixed those. I'm not saying that would have made a better story, but it just felt like one more extra thing on top of everything that was already happening that I actually did care about, right? Of like, this race is kind of interesting. Of like, this private company said they'd get there 2 years before everyone else, and now the engineers are like, all right, let's see if we can up our time. Like, that stuff is fun and fascinating because that's kind of what the show was sold to me as, where it's like a show about how potentially the media is not telling you the entire truth, is a little bit I'm not as interested in it.
Yes.
They still do some good stuff with that, but I'm just like, this feels like a different show than
yeah, I understand
than
that.
the rest. Yeah.
Do you want to talk about Lee, the North Korean astronaut?
Yeah, let's get to him. So one quick thing before we get there, because we mentioned this landslide. This is one of the things that happens a couple episodes in. I think we at least have to mention that it basically buries the start of this Mars base here, and they have to like find a like lava tunnel underneath them to dig them out from underneath to hopefully like make the sand go. Like, that stuff is wild. That stuff was awesome. I loved that stuff. And to have Ed and Danny trapped, just the two of them in that thing, like that. It like, as much as I thought that whole storyline was a distraction, I think that's a great way to have them like put in the same room and forced to talk about this thing a little bit or reconcile in some way, right?
It is a great scene. And the fact that Danny twists the knife, he pulls a knife that was like not even out on the table. He brings back Shane. Out of all of the conflicts he has with Ed, he brings back, you were a bad dad to Shane, and you're never going to get the chance to correct that. And harsh.
Yeah, absolutely. But so after all the whole landslide stuff, they've kind of reset everything up, and they need a part, right? They need a part. I forget what they need it for exactly.
I think it's to it's to launch Kelly back up to Phoenix. I do have to say,
they're already starting to think about her. Yeah.
When a character is pregnant, you're like, okay, here comes the dramatic birth scene. The dramatic birth scene that you've seen in a dozen shows. And I do love that the show's like, we don't need to show you that again. You've seen it. How many different ways can a birth scene go? Instead, we're going to strap this pregnant woman to a jetpack, and she's strapped on the top of a shuttle like she's suitcases on a car going on vacation. And the shuttle can't get all the way up to the space station, so it has to get just close enough, and then she unclips herself, zooms up there, and then she gives birth off screen, and it's fine. It's the jetpack that you were really gonna show you.
Oh my god! Like, this is it. Like, I'm into the problem that they have here, right?
Yeah.
I rolled so hard at like, we're strapping the pregnant lady to a rocket. Here we go. I'm just like, oh my god, this is ridiculous.
I think I prefer something that is ridiculous but is wholly unique to this show, maybe versus something that is very well executed, very graceful, but could be slotted in any number of dramas.
Right. And I think that is exactly why I'm more okay with this as the season finale, or just this storyline in general, because it is an engineering, math, science problem that they are trying to deal with. Not but will he tell him that he slept with his wife thing? Like, sure, you can have that on the side, but I don't want that to be a distraction from... well, something bad is about to happen, and the only way we can make it right is if we strap a person to a rocket. Oh, by the way, she's pregnant. That's the problem here. She's about to give birth. Yeah, like I'm into that, but it's also just so ridiculous. But I would rather have that ridiculousness than a distraction.
Right, and it's coming now. I think the show tonally laid really good groundwork in the first two seasons, and it bought a lot of confidence from you. And absolutely. I think it is picking its moments carefully for, okay, now we've got them. now let's play around a little bit.
Right? They've escalated from like,
Yes.
we need to be really careful about landing the ship. Like
Yes.
that's the problem. We need to land this thing here to like, okay, we don't have the proper docking stuff, so I'm gonna throw this giant tanker out in space towards you. You're gonna have to clip on to it, like that. Like that's still like, okay, you guys know how to land things and do all that, but here's a problem you haven't handled yet. To now we're strapping a person to a rocket,
and I think there are the correct stakes around everything that happens. Like you talked about what happened at the end of. I guess at the end of season 1, when Ellen is to catch that tanker, she's forever known as, you're the girl who made the catch. Like, that's how the public knows her. So these incredible things that are happening out in space, they have real meaning and weight, and they have a continual legacy. Nothing happens for naught in this show.
Yeah. So I think good escalation with all of that. But yeah, let's get to our North Korean who's over here by himself. What a wild twist. This really did, you said, this is Lost. This is the other 48 days.
This is the best Desmond since Desmond.
Right, yeah. This is just this whole, like, you thought the race hadn't been won by that. Nope, here you go. The other side.
And you realize he was the boot at the end of season 2.
Yeah,
in that flash forward.
Awesome
that must have been him. And we had no
awesome.
idea it was him the whole time.
Yeah. The guy is North Korea. No one knows he's up there except the North Koreans. And they can't even get in contact with him because something about his radio is not working right. Just absolutely wild. Yeah. And he's about to end his life because he's run out of supplies. No one is answering him. As far as he knows, he has no way to get to or contact the other base if he even knows that it's up there.
Yeah, he's been radio silent. There's no message coming in, no message coming out. So he does not know there are other people on Mars with him. And there are only a day's buggy ride away.
Yeah. And so, he's about to end his life with this gun that he has when in walk two more astronauts being like, hey, we need that part. Oh, there's another person here. Uh-oh. That's not good. That's not what we expected at all. That whole sequence was wild.
And to jump ahead to the season 4 finale, I love the cyclical poetry of Danielle getting shot with the gun that she chose to hide.
Mm-hmm. Yep, good bookends with that storyline there. It rhymes, right? She's the one that hides it. She's the one that gets shot.
There is a lot of rhyming in the show. I think it is very good at that. There's one silly thing I have to talk about, which is the Jolly Roger maneuver, where the NASA ship, their big move to get ahead of the race beyond Russia and Helios is that
solar sail.
That Danielle pipes the Pirates of the Caribbean song from the Disney ride across the comms so that everyone can hear it, every other ship, and they unfurl these solar sails and the solar winds just push them to Mars. It's silly. It's silly
good.
In the way that this show really it spins all its tickets on a couple silly moments and really makes them sing.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. I on one hand though, I wish we got more of them trying to develop this solar sail in secret, or who came up with that idea.
It's a fun surprise because you, the audience, don't know what they're about to do, and it's so fun when you catch on. Oh, that's what this music is. That's what they're about to do.
I like that they did that, but I guess that is my complaint with season 3 of we spent so much other time on this that there could have been more time spent on stuff like this, right? But yeah, I think that was a good fun one. I like the tension of the Russian ship not really being able to make it, and them having to come on board with NASA, and them starting to have to cooperate and work together, stuff like that. Because yeah, man, Danielle really does not like the other guy, the Russian captain. But even like in season 4, when they like talk about him and remember him, they're like, good guy, man. He wouldn't take any shit. Like, he was a good captain, right?
They
like
got
they
there
end up,
eventually.
yeah.
And I do like that even if we don't see, however long it was that they were marooned on Mars before they could get back home again, that they do show us the results of that time spent together. And that those people did form really strong bonds.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know if I have too much else to say about season 3 that wouldn't just bring me into what's happening in season 4.
There is one very funny moment when Ed is first hired to go aboard the Helios mission, and Dev is talking about how they don't want this mission to be for science. They want it to be for art. And he's like, we've got seats for everybody up there, like a poet. And Ed's like, you can't send a poet.
A poet?
Right.
Yeah.
Which is in direct opposition to Jodie Foster's line at the end of Contact. They should have sent a poet. That's what Dev's trying to do. He's trying to listen to Jodie Foster. And Ed's
great
like,
pull. I didn't even think about that. Yeah. Yeah. Which we covered Contact a few episodes ago. Go check it out.
Very fitting.
Yeah. The one thing I did forget that happened in season 3, also something that it's, again, one of those things like makes sense for the character. I like the trajectory, but also don't know if I really cared for the storyline to have what's her name become the president of the thing.
Ellen.
Yeah. Like, it completely makes sense for what's happening with the character. I think I don't know if it was getting harder for the show to find clips of government officials that they got permission to use if they had to ask permission.
That could be it.
I know that was something we talked about on Contact.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That they had to get permission to use Bill Clinton's voice and stuff to do all of that stuff, and there was that gray area of did he actually really sign off on all of that? I don't know. So I wonder if that was their go-to with but if we just put one of our own in the presidential seat, we don't really need to do as much of that.
And this is the trajectory of where Ellen has been going.
Yes.
This is what her and Larry and everybody going back to Thomas Paine and Deke Slayton have been wanting.
1000%. I think this makes sense. But then, like we said, season 3 is just a messy bitch that likes drama, and it becomes more about you slipped up and told someone you had sex with someone else in the Oval Office at which we kind of assumed was happening anyways, I'm sure, right? But that drama just takes a whole left turn, right? There is the astronaut that then comes out as gay while he's up there, and that's a whole debacle. And yeah, I think specifically with this storyline, I also want to put it out there that I'm not against these storylines. I'm not being this show is woke. But it that stuff I'm sure was happening and maybe got covered up or did not see the light of day as our space program lived and kind of pittered away. But that stuff happens in real life. That seems like a reality to me. It makes sense. I'm A-okay with all of that stuff. But again, a show about space exploration, a show about all of that. I want the engineering stuff. I want the that's kind of what I was sold on for this show. And so anytime they kind of get away from that, I'm like, okay, this is good. you're doing it well. It's not really what I want from this show.
I understand that. I think the show takes a multifaceted approach with if space travel proliferates, here's the engineering side, the tech side, the domestic side, the political side.
Yeah.
I like it. I do appreciate that Pam comes back again. And you see in the newsreel that starts off season 4 that Ellen won a second term. Then her and Pam got married and retired to a ranch in Texas, and we don't see them again. They truly ride off into the sunset. I might have missed something in that newsreel. I don't know what happened to Larry.
I don't remember either. He's just kind of out of the picture.
I like Larry, and I'm curious where he landed and if we're ever going to see their son again.
Yeah.
I understand that Ellen and Larry having a son was probably good for their political image. And they do seem like sweet, loving parents. That is like the last time you see Larry is he's telling their son a bedtime story and he's going to put him to bed. And Ellen's like, you don't have to come out to the public. And he says, no, I need to. With almost the casualness of, no, I need to go cut the grass. Which is weirdly sweet that he's like, yeah, I just have to do it. It's good for me and it's good for you and it's good for our household and the whole family. And you barely see that son. And I'm like, is this a window dressing kid? Or is this a kid like Danny and Jimmy Stevens that's going to become something later on? We have a couple of these right now. You can tell Kelly's son Alex is going to be important. I wonder about little Scotty Wilson.
Sure.
In season 4, Aleda has another kid. And I'm like, what is the benefit of her having another kid? What do we get out of 2 that we couldn't get out of 1? I'm like, maybe this daughter grows up to become somebody. And in season 7, all of these kids are going to make sense.
So this is, I think, what brings me into season 4 here. And here's where I thought the show was going to go by the end of season 3 and into season 4 here. I thought we were going to colonize Mars in a much more like, actually, like, we are colonizing it. We are like, I was almost expecting a little bit of parallels to like the American Revolution kind of thing, right? Like, you guys are too far away. There's this 8-minute delay, which is not the like 8 or 9 month ship delay that the American, but even still, like, the distance to get out here, if you actually need to send supply and stuff, like, I was expecting them to find like that asteroid or mine something or find life or some discovery that makes it possible for them to be self-sufficient, and for them to be like, hey, we're no longer Americans, or we're no longer the Russians. We are our own colony. This is a brand new planet. We are a new nation here. And that's not exactly what we got. Which is, on one hand, for me, for a speculative history kind of projection show, I don't know the right... There's so many words you could use to describe this show. But for this show, like, that is one of the things I'm hoping for out of this show. Maybe we'll still get that as the show continues. But I also went to a school named after an astronaut in my younger years, and we had a big kind of like space themed science program. We went to space camp for our field trips and stuff like that. And one of the things we always got, they were constantly talking about colonizing Mars. And hey, in 10 years from now, maybe 15, we'll have a colony on Mars, if not the moon, right? And that petered out. It never happened. No one ever talked about it again in real life. Right? Like, I mean, maybe there's some people out there, but for the most part, no one talks about, like, we're seriously thinking about colonizing Mars. So I was hoping that's where the show would go. And there's a bunch of the storylines that kind of lead into season 4 and start in season 4 that to me are kind of about that. The way that the Americans and Russians start working together so much in season, like, but by the start of season 4 here, when we get to see like this class divide in season 4. I was like, okay, so there's probably gonna be something like where they're gonna be making some kind of demands. Maybe there's unionization, which is kind of what we got here, and for the other side to be able to meet those demands, there was gonna be some like kind of communication back on Earth, but they kind of realized they can't meet those demands. So I was hoping that this science project that they're to discover life, or this asteroid thing, was going to have some effect that they could become self-sustaining and be their own thing. And that's where I was hoping it would go. And in all of those things, it never quite went there.
I can see that
stuff.
being season 5. I think that's
For
on
sure.
the way.
Yeah.
But we needed this middle ground. And I appreciate that they thought about it, that if space travel is growing this much, these space bases are growing this much, you need these, not grunts, but like hired technicians, people who aren't like full NASA engineers. They don't come from these military pilot backgrounds.
Workers, yeah.
Exactly. And for the first time, there's people up on Mars who aren't peers to each other. Before, everybody was kind of on the same level. You had your commander, but then everybody else was on the same level. They were peers, they were colleagues, they worked as a unit. Now, we have, like you said, we have a blue-collar workforce. And because they don't work for a specific nation, they work for Helios. They have a very different pull in that they have no pull here on the base. And there's all these business troubles, like you're promised all these bonuses, but if your project gets delayed, you never get those bonuses. You're promised the salary, but then there's so much cost in sending anything up to Mars that your pay gets docked just so you can have toothpaste, you know?
Right. Yeah.
I do think it's an interesting thing to stop and think about, and now was the time to do it.
Yeah. However, kind of what I was alluding to earlier in the show, I think most of season 4, they spend a lot of time on setup, on developing. I don't remember his actual name, but the Russian guy calls him Milosh.
Miles is his given name, but I like that he calls him Milosh.
Yeah, like they set his character up to kind of be this instigator between the blue collar workers and the more like sciencey, techie nerds and stuff like that. And I don't think you necessarily need to do that. I think you could have started where episode 7 ended and be like, okay, it's been a decade. We have a much bigger base. There's multiple nations up here. There's blue collar workers who clean the toilets, who fix the AC, like who do all of that stuff. And they've started to unionize because they're treated differently. Like that seems about the same jump as the other seasons have been.
Yeah.
To like, and now we have a space hotel and people are getting married in space. Like it. Why did you need to do all of this setup? I don't know.
We don't spend a lot of time with Miles at the end of this season. He doesn't have a clear button on the end of his arc, so that does make me think we're going to see him again next season.
Yeah.
And he has introduced the space exports when he sends a little Mars rock home to his daughter, and the mom takes the daughter with her when she goes jewelry shopping, and the jeweler's like, I have to have that Mars rock. I'll give you $5,000. That introduces something we have not had before.
Exactly. Yeah.
We've had this other commercialization of space angle with Polaris and Helios. And I do like that we're getting
Building up
another
wealth
another
yeah.
level introduced, and you wonder if we come back in season 5 and that family is like like Shane Company. They are like the jewelers of Mars. They are this
Mars
rising
Rocks, LLC,
Mars merchant.
right? Yeah.
Right, this rising Mars merchant class. There's interesting stuff, but I agree that it takes maybe too long to get there when we could have just started, like
Yeah.
you said, at like episode 7. We could have started mid-strike instead of spending episodes waiting to see if there will be a strike or not.
Yeah, I would have been A-okay if they just jumped straight there. I though on a different show, like something like Battlestar Galactica, where you spend time in that ship and you need to know the ins and outs of the ship and the characters and all that stuff. I like it where it's like, okay, the crew has this little like back alley bar that they hang out at. Like, that's cool. That's fun.
Yeah.
I like that. So like I'm not disappointed by any of that stuff. There was one thing that I was disappointed into, which will kind of be my bookend of how I felt about season 4, which I'll get to. But I think on the flip side, down on Earth, Margo's story.
Margo and Sergei are my favorite storyline. And boy, was I shocked at how that storyline wraps up.
Yeah, again, this is something I'm wrestling with because what they do is great stuff, but also it's kind of slow and it's not about space exploration, right? It's just this other extra added layer to make the burger seem fluffier and juicier and stuff like that, right?
That is a very big bun. You're just the where's the beef lady.
yeah. Where's the beef? I just want beef.
Yeah.
And yeah, you're the Sergei who's okay with the McDonald's hamburger. Just give me the food. I love it all. Here we go, America.
Never before have I been so tense watching somebody eat a cheeseburger. I'm like, I know something's about to go wrong, but I don't know what it is.
God, did they poison the cheeseburger? But so like I appreciate the story that they're doing here, right? This almost bait and switch, because yeah, we think that Margo has died in the bombing here when Aleida gets up to her room and it's all blown out. It's just like, oh no, she did not make it. Margo's gone too. And that's what the whole world thinks, except for Russia, because she has now defected to Russia.
Or been forced to defect to Russia.
Yeah.
They pick a great song to play over that final reveal at the end of season 3, which is Radiohead's "Everything in Its Right Place," telling you this was planned, this was arranged. They didn't pick her out of the rubble and take her there. The arc of the storyline that Sergei genuinely likes her, but is also being pushed to get information out of her. And there's this slow build year after year throughout the 80s. They go to this one conference, and every year they get a little closer and a little closer. But a little close for these people is just like, what if I touched your finger with my finger?
The awkward hand touch, yeah.
Right. What if we held hands in the elevator? Until finally one year she's like, I want you to kiss me. And he kisses her, and then he kind of like, he's like about to really go to town, and he's like, I can't do this. Because I don't know what I'm doing because of me and what I'm doing for my country. And then the goons come in. They're going to strangle him to death unless she tells them what they want to know. And she does it because she loves him and she wants him to live, wants his family to live. That's the reason why he can't leave. He's like, I can't leave my parents, my siblings. Right, yeah. Like, Russia would kill them. And I can't let that happen. And she's like, well, I can't let you staying in the country happen. The fact that he gives up so much for her, and that she in turn gives up so much for him. These are two people whose lives, whose reputations, whose careers have been destroyed for each other. And you think finally they have their chance. They can run away together. We've seen it happen. We have the model of a happy story can happen because that's what Ellen and Pam get. We know it's possible. Yeah. But the show will not let you have nice things. They shoot Sergei in the head.
Yeah. Um, yeah, it's this interesting like reversal of positions here. This like
Yes.
binary star, like they're
Oh,
just revolving around each other and can't really actually touch. But
I love when they have that final conversation with each other at Aleda's dinner table. And Sergei goes to hold Margot's hand, and he has to take her pen out of her hand first to hold her hand. She has been putting work first time after time after time. Like he is asking her to run away with him, and she's like, I'm very busy. I'll think about it.
yeah, yeah, but like a lot of this build up, which we do then get to actually start to see some of Star City,
Mm.
of the Russian side of things, which is something I've been wanting. But even still, it's usually that like board conference room thing. It's not the engineers working. It's not them like figuring out a math problem or something like that. So it is like a start that I was like, okay, I'm a little bit interested in that, but I was less interested in like the daily routine of Margot, like walking around town, buying a paper, going to the bakery, stuff like that. Her getting involved with this change of political regime that's happening.
Mm-hmm.
Again, a lot of that stuff I felt like they could have just skipped over, and
Mm-hmm.
having them revealed that she's helping to run some of their stuff in secret, and to then have it be this like it almost not necessarily right away start with, but very soon in be like, okay, we're gonna have to actually bring you back to the US now. Like they need to play that card. It's like it's once they play that card, that's when it's like, and now things are interesting here. Like how are we gonna activate someone's trap card? Is Yugi gonna be sitting there like, aha, right? But like that to me is the stuff that is interesting of how will these other characters take it when she's back in this room that everyone has known her in, but now her allegiances are elsewhere and everyone
Mm.
knows that they are, right?
Her she has to say that her allegiances are elsewhere. And she has to lie because she did all of this for one man, and she can't put a target on that man's back by widely telling the truth. She can only tell Aleda. And Aleda doesn't even totally buy it until Sergei goes to her personally.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, you are right about that. Thank you for clarifying. But yeah, like if it starts with that, and that the fact that the blue collar workers have unionized up on Mars, like I'm like, all right, let's go here. Like,
Yeah.
what is happening? What are the logistics of everything happening here? That I love. And it's these kind of final four episodes where stuff really pops off, with the union making demands, with Ed Baldwin like also making what seemed to me like I understand it, but it's a weird choice. But also, I don't like. Why are you the guy that's backing up the union? I know you're only
I
doing this out of spite, but also
Yes.
I get it. But also, like this
Ed
feels weird.
Ed is so petty and so stubborn, and he can only have things his way. And when Danielle fires him as commander, it's partially that he does discover this information because he's still a Helios employee. I love that. They're like, sir, you are still the senior project manager and you have to sign off on payroll. And he's like, wait a minute, something's screwy with this payroll. It's both he has of he's enough of a good person to go to these people and say you're being cheated, but also he's enough of a bad person that it's like
I'm
you
doing
are
this for my
doing
own
this.
reasons. Yeah.
Yeah, you're doing this despite Danielle and NASA and the entire chain of command. Once
Yeah.
you're no longer on top, you want to tear the entire structure down.
Yeah, and see, like I was kind of expecting the Union storyline. I was wondering if Ed was gonna kind of commandeer it and change them to be like, it's not necessarily about unionizing, He's like, yes, I'm fine with you if you guys want to actually do that, but we're in a unique opportunity where we have these resources, right? Like, this is where I was starting to think of like, well, maybe he'll start to make it so that they want to become their own colony and break away from everything. So that way they can be in charge of their own wealth and send stuff back to, right? That like,
again,
here's a different way to think about it.
You're on the right track. Thank you for bringing your specific personal history as a graduate of astronaut elementary school to this podcast. You're on the right track. I think they just wanted to do this middle stage first. I think what you're talking about is the next season.
Yeah. But like that's the thing though with these time jumps. Where exactly along that timeline are they going to jump to, right? And I think the big kind of thing that disappointed me about season 4 and how they went about it in the end is getting those resources was not to become a colony, was to force Earth to keep investing in space research. And
yes,
that felt like an undertone of like, oh, it's still about Earth. Which I feel like that's such a specific, like, I want a colony, like, give me the damn colony, right? Like,
you want to never see Earth again. You're Ed Baldwin. You're like, I live on Mars now. I'm not going back.
Right? Yeah. Like I wanted that stuff, and I think they're like. You're also not wrong. There is hope for that down the road. I think we will get there for sure. It just felt like that is what they were maybe going to set up here by the end of season 4, and then in whatever happens in season 5, it's like, okay, this colony has been established. Here's some of their imports and exports. Here's what's happening. What about the government? Like, is Ed the first Martian president or whatever new name that they come up with, right? Like, how does that work? Like that, like I was hoping to see. Yeah.
He names the entire colony after himself.
Baldwinburg.
Welcome to Shane's town. I would have to go back through the series and see if Joel Kinnaman has always done this or if it's something new for season 4 where Ed's, I don't know how old he's supposed to be, like in his 70s. And I don't know if he's like sort of leaning forward to have this like stooped older posture, or if the angle at which he holds his face like just looks better with the special effects makeup to make him look older. Like, oh, I have to have the light the right way so it sort of hides the seams. He's in like a permanent Kubrick stare the whole time. He's just he's glaring and glowering and leering at everybody.
He's an old curmudgeon. He does kind of feel like he has this seniority, right? He is also this like grizzled, like, I've not just been on space, but like I've been in like space combat like stuff, right? But also I've been in real combat on Earth. Like he has this macho man kind of, that's not the right word, but like
conflict with
this grizzled
Ed
John Wayne tone to him.
Yes, he's so entitled. But also you look at him, he is a man who has genuinely suffered so much, but he can be a little extreme in what he feels like he is owed for that suffering and how much suffering he expects other people to do in turn.
Yeah, I think he also feels like, especially now that Karen has died, he has nothing to go back to.
Right, it's just Kelly and Alex.
Yeah, and he knows that Kelly wants to be up there in space to do all of that stuff.
Yeah,
Kevin
and it turns out
is doing better in space because he was born in space, right? Like that makes sense. Like he's like, I belong here.
I can't wait for another generation of kids to go up to Mars, and Alex says, "You merely adopted the space. I was born here.
I was born in it."
I love when they sit down to the family spaghetti dinner. I love that that's been this one constant line. And Kelly has snuck Ed the Parmesan, and he puts an obscene amount of Parmesan on his spaghetti. It's like 3 shakes too many. It doesn't become a full Family Guy gag, but it's too much. And then he just forces his grandson to have it too. And she's like, Dad, he just doesn't want the Parmesan. Let him not have Parmesan.
Yeah, I was waiting for the line of like, he's lactose intolerant. Like he can't have cheese. Like what's happened? Which is something we've already seen in the show in Alita's family. But yeah, he just has this like gung ho attitude that is. He just has blinders on. It feels like he's mission focused. But not in the way that Margo is work focused.
Yeah.
Right. He's mission focused. There is a distinction between that, but yeah.
It's wild when, and you know exactly what's going to happen when they have to sneak into that room and the hole's only 12 inches wide. And he just pulls a yondu.
He's like, oh, he's sending his kid. Yeah,
right. Pulls a yondu and just sends his grandson in there like little Peter Quill, small enough for thieving.
Yeah.
I'm very curious what happens to Alex now that he has been through these experiences.
Yeah.
Poor kid.
I think I called him Kevin at one point. I don't know. Him. that kid. Boy.
Speaking of rascally kids named Kevin, how did you like the addition to Daniel Stern to season 4?
Daniel Stern
from Home Alone.
Which character did he play?
He's the new NASA boss.
Okay, yeah. Because I was like, I've seen him and stuff before. Who is he?
You don't recognize him when there's not a tarantula crawling on his face. I know.
Right, yeah. Which, speaking of that, I just went to go see Paddington in Peru. There is a tarantula crawling on someone's face in that one.
Classic. Children's movies gotta happen.
I think he fits the role of a show. Like the show has this like almost cookie cutter role for some kind of government / military type character who's not really. I think in this one he is NASA, but like is the like not really NASA, not really government, kind of some intermediary. And I think he fit that role well.
He has an interesting background in that he comes from the auto world. He ran like car plants. You see that he's like written this successful business book that he's got propped up in his office. And you think he's going to be this very harsh, profit-driven, efficiency and profit above all else businessman. And he really is like a man of the people.
I mean, he kind of is, though. Like, that is the plan with the iceberg or the asteroid thing.
But the profits are for the people. They make... The thing about this show is that frequently there are valid sides to a lot of the different arguments where they realize for us to mine this asteroid on Mars is going to deliver incredible economic benefits to people all over the world. But all these countries have to put up $3 trillion now, and they won't see any of that come back for 40 years. You can imagine how many things are going to have to be cut down on Earth to make up that $3 trillion. And those people aren't going to get anything back. Their grandkids are going to get something back. And it's for the greater good, but he's like, that is a big ask for people. I think he's a lot more grounded and down to earth and fair than you'd expect.
I'd agree with that, yeah.
And he has a very different energy than everybody else. He's a refreshing addition to the show.
Yeah, he's not the military leader. He's not the like liaison to the president, even though he sometimes takes calls from the president. President Al Gore in season 4.
Who claims that he discovered the asteroid.
God, fucking Al Gore, man. But yeah, like I think you do get to see a little bit, like a brief glimpse of his home life too, which helps you to kind of get into like who this character is.
he has like a nice wife. They just want to sit down and watch TV, and he's like powering away on the exercise bike. Like, I gotta keep healthy. And she's like, you eat too much salt. And it's just like so classic, blandly pleasant suburbia. It's kind of nice that we have that we have one character who goes home to just a normal, bland life. No drama here with him.
Like you said, he's from the automotive industry, so he has a good business sense, which I think is something NASA really learned when competing with Helios, right? It's like, as much as this is for science and stuff, there is a business to it. Especially when you're talking about investing in research and science and these new discoveries. What is the return on that we can actually prove why people should keep investing?
And when he cans, or not cans, just like shelves Kelly's search for microbial life, his argument is we have to put everything we have into asteroid mining because that is what it'll deliver profits, but in the sense that it will give people jobs. It will help people. It is more specifically immediately tangibly beneficial to the world than mining for life.
Yeah.
Than finding some microbes. And I appreciate that you can side with Kelly, you can side with Aleda. It's fun to see those two characters team up, but you get where Eli Hobson is coming from frequently. I like that he's not an enemy. He is as much a part of the team as anybody else is. Jumping over to Helios, we have to talk about the wildest single thing that this show does, which is when Dev Iessa goes to Ed Baldwin and asks, do you want to help me steal an asteroid? And then they play X Gon Give It To You.
Right, that is the end of episode 7, and that is the card that they played, and I was like, fuck yeah, let's go. It's like, this is what I'm talking about. Here we are.
It feels like an homage to Nicolas Cage asking or stating, I'm going to steal the Declaration of Independence, a movie that came out at about the same time as these events are occurring in this alternate timeline. It's just that. It is that exact kind of thing. And then they're putting in the needle drops of the time, and incredible.
It was so good. That
so
I think has been
silly,
my favorite,
but again, yes.
like, end of episode. Here's a song that fits with everything. If you listen to a certain line in the song, right? It's just like, this is awesome. I love this. It's so silly, but it is so well earned. You are absolutely on board. You're like, yes, Gun, give it to me, please. Give it to me, X. Let's go.
I love later when he's talking to one of the Helios guys, and he says, do you want to be a millionaire or a billionaire? Which is just like that Timberlake line from The Social Network.
Yeah. Oh man, yeah. There's there's a lot to dig in. There's stuff that we haven't even touched on.
I want to talk about the music on this show. I love the score. I love the ponderous organ music that plays when they're out in space. But I love the use of specific needle drops of the time period. One of our favorite movie trope bingo squares we count on every year. I love using Black Hole Sun as the montage to transition in season 3 from we have to speed up going to Mars to we have launched, we are going to Mars. In the beginning of season 4, they play the Gorillaz' Clint Eastwood over this great split screen. That's Miles getting used to life at the base and Danielle getting used to life on the base. Parallel side by side, and you see how vastly different their stories are till there's the point where they cross over. And I like that they give Danielle, who's a character I really love. I really appreciate that she's healthy and she has a good head on her shoulders and she's generally sensible and she's like a breath of fresh air, just a lighthouse in a storm compared to all the messes that are all these other characters. You know you can count on Danielle. That Danielle is like, I went down there, vibes seemed off. We gotta do something for these people. Like, she's not blindsided by the unionization, and she's not against it necessarily. It's more of an issue of, this is
I
the
need to be in
wrong
control,
time.
yeah,
Right.
because
And
I'm the
this
captain.
this is the wrong time and place for this. If you waited until after we caught the asteroid, absolutely I would hear you. But we have a very narrow time window to accomplish something that is once in a lifetime. If we miss this, we are going to miss this incredible benefit to every person living on Earth. Like, you kind of get it. But I love that montage. There's just several good musical choices in this season and throughout the series, and I just really appreciate them.
Yeah, shout out to all of that. I'm interested to see, like, especially if the show has 7 seasons planned, that means what? We have 3 more decades, and they were already early 2000s. So
yeah, 2012 is the timestamp on the little flash forward we got at the end of this season. So season 5 is 2012. And then you can imagine, season 6 is 2020. And then like season 7 is when it will surpass the time that we are living in, that it will be entirely in the future. And that'll be the final season.
I mean, though it would probably be pretty close to recent time. If it's 2025 now and season 5's not out yet, I don't know if we even have a release date on that, if it's out this year or in 2026, right? Like, by the time that season 7 is out, it might be 2030 something.
Right, it is the same year. That's true.
Yeah. Which is an interesting to think about, because even here and now, 2030 still feels like the distant future, even though it's only 5 years away. Good Lord. But yeah, I'm wondering where this will go, especially in such a grounded show. Where does the exploration stop, or where does it be like, we're trying to get out of our universe? Like, is that where the show is headed?
Season
down
7
the
is
road?
wormholes. Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Oh my. Can you imagine if season 7 they get to wormholes?
Time travel. They go back to, yeah.
Danny was killed in Shane was killed in an anonymous hit and run from a driver we never saw.
Has to keep the loop going.
Right. What if it's like a 60-year-old Kelly who has to kill Shane?
Good Lord.
Who knows where this show's going? These are some questions I have for season 5. There's minor supporting characters who have been left along the way, like, that I'm curious. Do we ever see Larry again? Do we ever see that kid again? Things where I'm like, are you done? Or are you going to, like, pick somebody up and suddenly they're in season 6 again? There's a lot of little supporting characters like that. We're reaching the point where I was shocked that Ed did not die at the end of this season. I'm like, how much older can he get? I was very happy that Danielle lived. I'm like, Danielle, who's like younger than Ed. You can see there being at least another season of Danielle. So I'm very happy she pulled through and she got to meet her little grandbaby.
When she did get shot, I was like, oh, she's the one that's gonna die, because I also thought Ed, like, he's older, he's hiding this handshake thing, like, he's the one that makes sense it would die. So when they do that switch and pull the rug out and she's the one that got shot, I was just like, oh no, like, this has me on the edge of my seat now, you know?
There were, when she's recording that video message to her stepson, talking about how she's so proud of him and she's excited to meet her grandbaby, and talking about how, like, you know, I wasn't there when you were a little kid because she wasn't married to his dad yet. And she's like, but I get to see your daughter's first words and first steps, and I'm so excited. That's the equivalent of, I'm 3 days away from retirement. And then during this conflict on the base, she radios down to Ed, and Ed says, "Hi, Bob." And she just brushes him off. And I think that's the first time that a "Hi, Bob" has not been answered in turn. And I thought, that's a bad omen. And
That's
it almost is.
the start of the split between them, you know?
Right. It is interesting to watch Ed. His marriage with Karen falls apart. In the first episode of season 3, he's married to this other woman, and then she's only there for that episode, and then that marriage falls apart. And Danielle is like his work wife, and that work marriage falls apart.
Yeah. I mean, that is the thing. I wonder if Ed can finally get it right and make something work and fix something like that in season 5, and
That'd be nice.
Not actually marry. I don't need that to happen because Danielle already has a family. But for them to reconcile in a way that they finally mesh like they used to, I think that would be good for Ed. To see him get a win, kind of, right?
Yes.
Not have
and to get a win that he is
another loved one die.
That he is earning through emotional labor and not just space heroics.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you think we ever see Margo again? The way her storyline ends, where she is in handcuffs being taken away by the Russian government, and Irina said there are consequences for what you've just done. I'm like, that might be the end of Margo.
Wasn't she being taken away by the Americans? They had her diplomatic immunity repealed, and that's why it was the Americans arresting her, right?
Oh, she was so certain that, like, once my job here is done, Irina takes me back to Star City. So I just presumed there they are. And because they're so mad at her, she gets to be in handcuffs for her trip back home, where surely they will just torture her and kill her. That's an interesting question. I feel like, again, we can get another decade of Margo out of this. Until they added Daniel Stern this season, Rin Schmidt was the final credit. It's everybody's names and then with Rin Schmidt. And she has been this sort of anchor point to the series, among its several anchor points. I don't know if it's possible for one character to survive, for one actor to survive through the entire run of the show. Because, like, we started with, like, child Aleda, and we could have, the current Aleda we have aging until the very end of the series. But for these slightly older characters, I'm like, there's a time limit on these. We can't have a Margo or an Ed or a Danielle forever.
Right. There's certainly some stuff like that could come back up. I think for me, it's also other nations. It's generally speaking, really only been the Americans and the Russians. We get a little bit of North Korea, but again,
and we
the same
see
issue that was happening in season 1 and 2, where we only see them in space. We don't see what's happening down on Earth and what their program looks like. We don't see them at mission control, so to speak.
We see that there is the M7 nations, which I think is like NASA, Russia. I think Helios is in there. We see that India is in there. There's mention of the Brazil space program.
Exactly.
So I think the stage is being set, maybe slower than you would like.
Is that where some of these characters might pop up again? Are they going to help? Like, will they take the experience from NASA to go to another country and start their program and do something like that?
Like what Sergei wanted him and Margo to go off and do was to help go live in Brazil. That's possible. And I think there are enough, like, loose ends around that you could pick up somebody and find out that that's what they've been doing. Like, maybe Svetlana, was that her name? The cosmonaut that Ed had a crush on at the beginning of this season?
I don't remember.
Like, maybe maybe she was not tortured and killed, but imprisoned and eventually released, and maybe we see her down the line.
Yeah.
Or we see, like, there's all sorts of different connective tissue we can draw. When we see Sergei and he's just like a high school science teacher in Iowa, and he's got that one know-it-all student who always has her hand raised, I really wonder if we're going to see her again. That seems like a deliberate plant of look out for her. She's the next generation of super engineer.
Or just that kind of like, we have some things that rhyme and then some things that you think are about to, but then won't.
Because
right?
this is a show that I think is good at the rhyming, good at the structure, but we have said we'll like break conventional narrative rules. Starting with when they kill Shane in season 1, something a lot of other shows would not dare to have happen. I was shocked that Margo and Sergei don't get to live together. That after all of the decades of severe sacrifice for both of them, he gets shot in the head while eating a Big Mac.
Yeah.
And she gets carted off to who knows where. And the way she reacts, I think it's very telling that after Aleda sees Sergei's body, you see her screaming in her car and with no sound. And then when she goes to tell Margo, the camera is like outside looking through like a closed glass door. Like, this is so, you don't get to be in here. This is too sharp, too emotional. And I had the captions on, and a lot of the dialogue isn't audible, but the captions say at one point, Margo just says, "That's enough," which is such a heartbreaking way to react, you know, when your friend tells you that your longtime love has been shot in the head, that she's just like, "That's enough. That's enough." And then when she's up there in the observation room with the single tear running down her face, when she just says, "This isn't a place for feelings." Like, literalizes this thing that you know she's been thinking about her entire life. Just, this isn't a place for feelings. I shouldn't have had them. That was my major flaw.
I think the character I want to see come back is Molly Cobb's husband. I know he really doesn't have a necessary reason to, but he was just a welcome character whenever he showed up.
Exactly. He's just such a great break from everything that's happening. You're like, thank God Wayne is here. And with him being a painter and with Molly getting into painting later in life, I wonder if just incidentally, like, somebody will go to a museum and there's like a banner up for come see the Cobb painting exhibit. They could be one of those things that's just like in the background as a mention. Or in the news reels that open each season, you see, like, you know, New York Museum of Art has groundbreaking new exhibit, the paintings of the Cobbs, or something like that.
Yeah.
That's a nice place to include nods to past characters. Stuff is always named after people, which is a wonderful sense of legacy. We have the Molly Cobb Space Center. We have, like, the Thomas Paine satellite. This asteroid base we see at the end is named after Sergei. It's really sweet. I love that the little landing module that comes off of the Helio ship is named Popeye because Shane loved Popeye.
Yep, indeed. Lots of opportunities for little head nods and stuff like that down the road.
Mm-hmm. One thing I want to talk about, again, these are more details that you get in like those news collage openings.
Yep.
That as our characters do remarkable things, Hollywood makes movies about them based on the true story of them having done the remarkable thing.
Yeah.
Like the story of Gordo and Tracy Stevens was turned into a movie called Love in the Sky, starring, at the time, actual couple Dennis Quaid and Meg Ryan. And then at the beginning of season 4, they talk about a Race to Mars movie starring Clint Eastwood as Ed Baldwin and Jada Pinkett Smith as Danielle.
Yep.
I love these. And my prediction for where we pick up at season 4 is starting in the year 2012. They're going to catch us up on the years in between then. I think that in this timeline, instead of David Fincher making The Social Network about Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook, he makes it about Helios. you get the Cosmic
Yeah.
Network, the Mars Network or something.
Yeah.
And
the
I thought
spatial
about
network.
it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I think the actor that in universe they would have pulled, it would have been Chadwick Boseman playing Dev Issa in the David Fincher Helios movie.
Yeah. Yeah. Something like that. That'd be fun. Or yeah, we get we get some scene of like a disappointed Ed Baldwin as like a new shipment of like new recruits and people come up, and it is like poets and artists and movie makers and stuff, and they're like they're filming some scene on Mars for something.
Yes,
and he has
we
to
have already
accommodate them.
had that. They talk about how there is a reality show about the moon miners that's supposed to be something like Deadliest Catch or Ice Road Truckers.
Yeah. Yeah, but now you have the poets and the painters coming up, and there's Ed just like, oh my
podcasters,
God.
can't wait to hear the first podcast from Mars.
Oh God.
Somebody's going to try and do a
Pornhub is up
concert
there.
on Mars.
Like, yeah.
First porn on Mars.
Oh, you know they would. You know they would. They've already done stuff in the International Space Station and things like that.
Great. You know, if the Polaris Hotel would have survived for more than one night, night 2 is when they filmed the first porn up there.
Yep, indeed. I don't know, man. There's lots of stuff. There's lots of ways that this can go. I am, as much as I want that colony, right? I am up for being surprised and this taking a direction that I was not expecting. Being like, oh, this is fun, or this is really cool. Yeah, I would like to see what happens. We only have Helios, that one company. Is there a second company from a private sector also up there making another colony or something like that, right? Who knows what? Who knows?
Yeah. It's exciting. I really enjoyed the time spent with this show. I was very impressed. It's so dense in content and in tones and in emotions. You really get a lot out of it. I'm shocked I don't hear people talking about this more. And it is a time commitment. There's 4 seasons, 10 episodes each, but the episodes are like whole hours. It does take a little while for you to kind of lock in season 1, but it's been rewarding. I really hope people watch this and it's successful and it gets all 7 seasons and a spinoff.
I hope
the
so.
full community treatment.
Yeah. The like small kind of feedback I got online was also just like, yeah, I liked season 1 and 2. So I don't know how indicative that is of the broader kind of sense, but it is for a show about space, and I mean this no pun intended, it is more down to earth, right? It is, like we said, about this drama and about this the kind of logistics of making these problems work, and I think that's a different kind of tension to something like Severance, where they're just like, where are they working? What's happening here? What sci-fi mystery is going on? You know, so it's a different kind of show for sure. But I've enjoyed it. I've had a good time.
Happy we watched this.
Indeed. Okay, let's move over to bingo real quick. Pull this up on screen. We got our bingo cards right here. I did get one of my flip phones from my quota thing. I for sure got some flip phones in this one. When again, you guys know I'm terrible with names. The younger brother, Danny's younger
Jimmy.
brother, Jimmy. Thank you. He had one. He had one in this, so I'm gonna go ahead and mark this as.
I have insufferable in-law, which is Kelly having to deal with her late lover's mother.
Ooh, good call. Yeah.
I have hiding in the house the whole time. Can I cross that off for Lee, the North Korean astronaut?
I because you had the spirit of this was more like the spoilers for this movie that I'm about to mention here, like Parasite, right?
I was thinking of Parasite and I was thinking of Longlegs.
Okay, yeah, like I don't feel like he's hiding, but the North
Right.
Koreans are
Okay.
hiding that they put a man on the moon, right? Like I don't know that. You know what? Yes, I will give that to you because I think that is the purpose of the reveal, that there has been someone here before them, right? And that they didn't know about. I'll give that one to you. Sure.
Aleda's definitely building a red string conspiracy board in season 3, trying to figure out who was it that gave all those secrets to the Russians.
Mm-hmm. I have an awkward hand touch.
Ah, yeah. We got that for sure.
Let's see. I'm currently meeting yourself thanks to time travel. Who knows? Maybe we'll get that down the road. Dealing with the pet. Movie backlog note. Sad boy hours.
That's all that time Danny's stuck out in the North Korean ship.
It's definitely sad boy hours when he's just sitting out there. Yeah.
And he asks Danielle if he can come home, and she says no. So one of my squares is the board. And I meant this as a mysterious higher council, like the board in Severance, like the high table in the John Wick movies. I think the M7 collective is too clear and obvious for me to cross this off. I meant it as something with a mystery to it.
Yeah, I don't also see them as like a board of directors, but it is just an alliance between a couple governments and stuff like that. I don't know. Power
Was anyone
outage.
framed for? Yeah, we did get a power outage
outage
briefly
in this one.
I think it happened on Mars.
Guy.
I remember that happening at some point. Nobody was anyone really framed for murder?
No, I don't think so.
Not quite.
How do you feel about local water and hole? I don't know why I didn't mark this off last time.
Yeah, you got it the first time. You would have gotten it the first time for the outpost.
I was even thinking about the one on the ship.
Let's see. You can have secret door.
Secret.
They have to take a secret door to get to that little Russian bar with the vodka still.
Secret door. Secret tunnels. Secret tunnels. Man, still didn't get to see a briefcase full of cash.
Dang it. Shady business deal?
How shady? It's not really shady that the Russian lady, Home Alone dude, and Alita are kind of talking there, though, right? Like that's in the middle of a conference, right? Like they're
Kyle. What's a shadier business deal than asking somebody to help you steal an asteroid?
That's a heist. That's not a business deal.
Okay. So in yours, the shady business deal barely counts as crime. It can't obviously be crime, such as rerouting an asteroid back to Mars.
That just feels like on a different level to me. I don't know. Like what would be a good example of a shady business deal then? I'm thinking of like if Russia had gone to Dev Ayesa to steal it and like had paid him like hey, we'll pay you, $1 trillion to steal this from us, and that's all on the like hush right of like
Okay.
because
All right.
between him and Ed, it's not a business transaction. They're just like, fuck it, man. Let's just like we don't want them to get this
Right.
thing. So
Let's go and give it to him.
Yeah. Heartfelt reunion. I think we definitely have
Yes.
that between Margo and Alita, at least. The way
You
that
know, to make
she
another
hugs.
Lost reference, as we do so often, I was really hoping, I guess Ellen and Pam are our equivalent of Rose and Bernard, where they had to spend all this time apart and they come through so many obstacles, and they do just get to peacefully retire by the end of the story and nothing else bad happens to them, and the show gives you one beam of sunlight where it's like,
Right, yeah.
don't worry, those guys are untouchable. We're not going near them again. You won't see them, but know that they're okay. I was really hoping Sergei and Margo would get to do that.
I think that's about all I got.
Not bad, not bad.
I don't think I have anything else. So yeah, I think that was another real good one, especially when it's a show that covers so much stuff, right? There's a little bit of everything in there.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's see here. Pulling us back up on screen. Melissa, talk to me about recommendations. Do you have anything new? 'Cause
I do have a couple new things.
to be honest, I don't know if I have anything else that's new.
Well, if you're done with season 4 and you're like, I crave more Toby Kebbell, where on Apple TV Plus can I see more Toby Kebbell? You can watch Servant, a show executive produced by M. Night Shyamalan. This is 4
was him.
seasons. It is complete.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay,
He
yeah.
also, I don't know if anybody cares to remember this. He was Doctor Doom in the Josh Trank Fantastic Four. And so I was
still
really
haven't watched that one.
he was also the not bad ape, but the bad ape in like the second Planet of the Apes movie, like the villain ape who led the war.
Okay,
That's him
interesting.
too, I think, under all the mocap. I was really expecting him to play Russian villain. You look at that guy and you're like, that's a Russian villain. So the fact that he's just like some blue collar, like oil driller from Louisiana, shocking. Really was not expecting that's who his character was. Servant is an incredible horror show about a family. It's about this married couple that has lost their baby, and to help them through their grief, they have this realistic doll of their baby. And the mom, who is so grief-stricken that she's kind of delusional, insists, well, it's time for me to go back to work. We have to hire a nanny to take care of the baby while I'm at work. And the husband's like, all right, we're going to hire a nanny to take care of this plastic doll. All right, whatever helps you. And so they hire this nanny, this odd young woman who comes in and is like, oh no, I love taking care of little Jericho. And the husband's like, plastic doll. You know that, right? Plastic doll. Like, you don't really have to do anything. Like, while my wife's not around, like, you can go to the mall. She's like, no, I'll take the baby for a walk in the park. The end of episode 1 is suddenly there is a real life baby back in their house. And the whole series is a mystery of what happened? What did she do? How is
What
there
is
this
happening
baby here?
in general?
It's a fascinating little bottle show. The whole show is just in like this one house with like 4 characters. And it's surprisingly compelling for how much they can get out of that initial premise.
Yep.
So if you can deal with baby death, a little bit more advanced than 10-year-old getting hit by a car, like in season 1 of For All Mankind,
Or
I do
electric
really
dog
recommend
toy
Serving.
Death. Yeah.
These seasons in particular really bring us the Star Trek energy.
Mm-hmm.
I recommend Star Trek as a whole concept, but specifically, I'm going to say Wrath of Khan. Wrath of Khan, I think, is a good movie that stands alone enough that you can go watch it even if you only have the base knowledge of Star Trek. If you just know who like Kirk and
Sure.
Spock are, you'll get enough out of Wrath of Khan. And Wrath of Khan is perhaps best known for "You are and always have been my friend." This connection through the glass as somebody is in mortal peril. And we have a lot of those. We have a lot of trying to connect through glass in For All Mankind.
Absolutely.
I recommend The X-Files. Margot Madison has a lot of Dana Scully DNA in her.
Yeah. I would say
X-Files
so. I agree.
is full-on sci-fi. I don't think there's really anything about it that's speculative fiction, slightly more grounded. It's like full-on aliens, ghosts, monsters. But the neat thing about X-Files is that it had the actual mythology of the show. It had those episodes that you could watch and get the actual like alien cover-up government conspiracy story. But there's also a ton of just mystery of the weeks, and those come in every flavor. No matter what type of paranormal or supernatural or sci-fi thing you want to deal with, or whether you want like a very serious crime story or just a very goofy alien shapeshifter took my body kind of story. X-Files has everything.
Yeah. It sure does.
And of course, we keep mentioning it, but here's another full recommendation for Lost. I'm
Sure,
just
yeah.
really, with all the things we've been watching lately for our various shows, I'm really seeing the aftershocks of Lost lately.
Still happening, yeah. Or the people who were like in film school and stuff as Lost was happening are now in the industry making stuff and have come
And they're
into
like,
their own. Yeah.
I want to have a mysterious man in a suit point from a distance in a rural landscape. Let me do it this time.
Exactly. I think the only thing I would add on there, and this is one with a caveat, is House of Cards. The caveat, obviously, being Kevin Spacey, about how much you can tolerate of him and how much you want to separate art from artist and stuff like that. But yeah, especially as season 3 got to, we got to see the White House ourselves and not just like some old found footage or pictures of a president, but as we got to see more of the political side, as season 4 started to introduce the North Koreans to the mix here, and we start to see this world stage, right? Having a show about politics and stuff like that might fit in a little bit with that there. So, House of Cards.
Okay.
Indeed. I think that is about it for recommendations. So, for next episode, our belated Valentine's Day episode. It's not really a Valentine's Day. We were planning on it originally. We're just going to move it to the first weekend in March here. We are going to read the story Love Everlasting. This is a graphic novel. It's 2 volumes, and this is by Tom King and Elsa Chartier. This is a kind of romance / time travel mystery that goes to some really, really fascinating places. It is, I've read through this about a year and a half ago ish. Had a great time with it. It's been something that we've been wanting to cover on the show since I think it first kind of came out and we discovered it. I was like, I think this could be really fun whenever it's out. And I have a feeling we're both gonna really, really enjoy it here. So I'm excited to get into Love Everlasting for our next episode. If I'm not mistaken, I believe you can find this on Comixology. I might be wrong on that, but at the least, I know you can find this on Hoopla. That's where I've read it in the past. I now also own both of the volumes, so I can read it physically this time, which I'm excited to do. But yeah, I think that is about it. Go pick it up from your local comic book store if you want to. That's also a great place to pick up that book there. But yeah, that's what we'll be up to next time. So I think that about wraps us up here for this episode of the Whatnauts review show. Melissa, where can people get in contact with you?
Just write me an email. Let's keep it old school. Write me an email at yourhostmelissa@gmail.com.
Good stuff. You guys can find me at Yo Kyle Springer, and if you would like to stay up to date with all of the stuff that we do here at The Whatnauts, we are at The Whatnauts Official on Threads. We are at thewhatnauts.com on Blue Sky, so please go like, share, and subscribe. Y'all know the deal with that. If you're watching this on YouTube, go check out more of our videos over there on that side of the screen. That would help us out a ton as well. Thank you so much for checking this out. We hope you enjoyed. We will see you all next time. Bye.
Bye.